So now we'll go into a discussion session, and I would like to invite Huimin, Andrew, and perhaps Chonghua to also join here. And as you are thinking about questions, I'll start with one question for each one of you, and then maybe we can open it up to any questions that you may have. And think also about more general questions, not necessarily focusing on the presentations. These are experts in AI and computational methods applied to medicine. And that's an opportunity to also ask broader questions that you may have. So let me start with a question regarding Vijaya's presentation, maybe Chonghua. So Vijaya talked about AI augmented neurologist diagnosis. And perhaps you can give us a little bit more information about what that means. What does it mean for an AI assisted? How AI and the neurologist interact in order to come up with an improved diagnosis?
Yes, sure. We, through the theory of our researchers, we have proved AI models has the capability to perform at least equally to human practitioners. So, but the problem is, how do we define the procedure for AI assistant? For now, what we are doing is to conduct a pilot study with Brain and Spine Center, Arizona. They are the advisor there. They are clinical trial recruitment advisor. And what we are trying to do is to help them pre-screening the patients to recruit them into different programs. And right now, we are still at a stage to define how to make AI model better support or make the procedure more efficient. But recently, there is a paper published in Nature. What we could see a hint. They defined AI support routine. In that paper, what they show is okay. Let me give a background of that paper. So what they do is through 1 year and a half, 1 year and a half, they have 6 neurologists and 100K patients in total, and they separate the entire population into 2, so equally with randomness. So for one group, for half of the patient, they are doing the original procedure, that is for screening, and for the other half, they defined a new procedure that is to do with AI support. And the result is very promising. They shows with AI support, the workload is reduced by 46%, and the detection rate is increased by 19%. And most importantly, there is no significant evidence to show there is increasing false positive rate. That means all the outcome is positive, and the negative impact is very limited. Yep.
So Chonghua, let me push a little bit further. So what does AI support mean?
Yeah. For AI support, what they did do is in their original procedure for the very first pre-screening, they have 2 viewers, 2 neurologists. And in their new proposed method, there is only 1, but supported by AI.
How?
For how?
I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
how exactly the AI, and because I think that's a broader question. how do we envision AI and physicians working together, and how this interaction will take place?
Yeah, according to their report, they use a tool. So for that paper, the research group doesn't propose any AI models by themselves. Say they use a tool. So what the tool provides is based on the given imaging, the tool is going to outline the region of interest and also predict a probability of the cancer they're interested.
Okay. Let me ask Andrew a question. So I guess one of the important features that you saw that were predictive of initiation of Ozempic or related uh, medicine was interactions with a psychiatrist, and you had the indicator. One of the questions is, beyond the indicators and the diagnosis, there may be more information in the clinical notes. Do you envision potentially LLMs extracting features from those clinical notes and hopefully improving the predictive ability of models of this type?
Yes, I think there are two major opportunities to expand on this with enriched data, including from clinical notes in electronic health records, as well as all of the imaging data, the scans, the images, and so on, as your lab is doing to understand, physiologically how the heart is remodeling or how the brain is responding to substantial weight loss. So not only looking at kind of the uptake of these crucial medications, but their effectiveness with these brain and heart scans. In terms of the clinical notes, I think there's a lot we can learn from those, and that would be an obvious next step in this research. And you can see that when you just use claims data, the performance indicators indicate moderate performance, but not excellent performance. So I think to really bring it up a notch and develop an effective predictive model, we would need to add such information. Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you. And I'll have a question for Huiming. So I guess you are using the knowledge graph as a way of predicting the probability of an edge between two nodes in the graph, and that may indicate a new disease and a drug that has not been used for that disease as a way of addressing that disease. Knowledge graphs are something that we humans don't typically interact with, and we do need a model, I guess, to interact with a clinical graph or some script. One of the questions, and I think that there is related work in the literature, is could you envision extracting examples from the knowledge graph and using these examples as a way of instruct tuning LLMs, and so fine tuning an LLM by feeding it more information that is extracted from the knowledge graph, and then have the physician or the scientist interact with the LLM that now is improved by using the information in the knowledge graph?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So yeah, the LLM, as I show in my slides, the LLM do make a mistake, and we have the human feedback to correct the error, let LLM know you are making a mistake. And for the biomedical entity, now it did a good job. But for the relation entity, like extraction, it still did some kind of make some errors. Like for example, in the abstract, firstly it says extracts the information, says ACE2 is a biomarker for COVID-19. But this is not like a correct. So ACE2, it is associated with COVID-19, but not a biomarker for COVID-19. And then we do need to let the domain expert then to verify it again, and let LLM know, okay, you're making mistakes again, and let LLM know, LLM to improve the accuracy. And that's how we like do the iteration. Without the feedback from human, LLM can do like infer too much, do have some hallucination. That is a big problem of the AI. So I think, yeah, including the human feedback is definitely very important. And the LLM can do also the knowledge graph itself can also when we use the GNN, we're also trying to use explainable AI. When it makes predictions like a drug can treat a disease, which also try to also extract the subgraph, why this drug can treat this disease, what's the path from this drug to this disease. And this detail, we are also trying to extract it to give more insights to scientists, let scientists have more confidence about why the AI makes such predictions.
So in what you describe in your answer and also in the talk, the LLM is sort of important in informing the knowledge graph, right? So extracting information from the literature and then forming the knowledge graph. Do you see also a role for the LLM as a way of, after constructing the knowledge graph, to somehow instill the information that is in the knowledge graph, because it's more natural with a scientist to interact with a language model rather than interacting with the knowledge graph?
Yeah, that's we haven't done that, but definitely I think I agree with you. We can so part of our current work is we use LLM to explain the like community structure. Do some like structures in the network. We first use some statistical methods or machine learning methods to identify the structure, like the clustering feature of the network, and then after get the clustering results, we don't know how to interpret it. So we then use the LLM to explain why this why is there a cluster? Maybe it's like all COVID related cluster. That cluster is all like coronary heart disease related cluster. So we incorporate the LM to give more explanations of our results. But how to, if we without any results just feed the whole large graph to LLM, I'm not sure how LLM can respond to the this big structured graph.
Okay. I mean, we can discuss offline. There may be some ways in which this can be done. So I would like to open it up for any questions that you may have, either very specific to the presentations, but also broader questions. So I see Bill, and please come to a mic to ask the question so that you can be recorded.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. So within the CTSI, we're very passionate about trying to generate real world evidence and reusing our clinical data. So my question for you is, how hard would it be for you to translate what you've done already with your machine learning and claims data to an LLM approach to real world data in our common data models that we have available? And how could we help you do that?
Thank you for your question. I think that our data that we've used to date reflect more privileged segments of the US population. And so I think there's some urgency in expanding our work into populations like the one served by Boston Medical Center. And so I think kind of taking the basic infrastructure, incorporating clinical notes, using LLMs, and then targeting a population that's urgently in need of these metabolic interventions would be a wonderful next step, and could really inform targeting of these drugs and kind of continuing to highlight that the people who actually need these medications are not getting them. So thank you for the offer.
Hi, I also have a question for Andrew that pulls into a question for the whole panel. Something that struck me from your data was some of your top users were females, but also the age range was 45 to 54, if I was digesting that correctly. And that's a unique sort of physiologic period of reproductive senescence. So was that part of your discussion as far as women 45 to 54 as a sort of underappreciated group using GLP-1 agonists. And to my knowledge, that's not really far in the clinical literature yet. And then this pulls into comment by the panel on the use of AI as teasing out sex as a biological variable in our research and clinical trials, which we all know is becoming increasingly important.
Yeah, so just to briefly address the first question, I think this gets to Yannis's general point that you know, in administrative claims data, we're missing so much context underlying the patterns that we see, and so we really need to dive into the clinical notes to get that valuable context about why the age pattern is as we see it, and why we're seeing such striking gender patterns. Why are females in that age range getting the drugs at such higher rates than people at other age ranges and their male counterparts? So wonderful question, and something to dig into with more refined data, and maybe with the Boston Medical Center data set.
I do not have much to add.
Okay.
Chris Shanahan. How do we, this is a question to all of you. I'm worried about hallucinations, not my own personally, but the AI. As humans, we have hallucinations all the time, and we learn to deal with them. We've learned to set them aside, evaluate them. How do we do that for our AIs? How do we teach our AIs to be self-critical, and how to distinguish and to isolate hallucinations so that we don't create problems? Thank you.
Fantastic question. And maybe we can start with Hui Min and then get all of your views on this topic.
Yeah, that's really a very good question. AI do has a lot of hallucination, and in our example, we let domain expert we had some master student, PhD student to evaluate. Okay, this entity, is that really show in this abstract? If not, why? Our expert will kind of analyze why. Then it can also know. Okay, the AI infers this pathway is kind of related to all the other entities in this abstract. So we kind of use a prompt to the LLM, let LLM do not infer too much, just stick to the entities which are shown in this text. So that's one kind of way, and I guess I do not think of I don't have much a better solution. The only way I can think of is we include some human feedback, but this way also depends on the quality of the human efforts. If the human we hire, if that master student is not like cautious enough, careful enough, maybe the error still can propagate. So we kind of have some quality control on the students. We first give them training and give them some tests. I first myself scan 100 papers, give some results, and I use these 100 papers, send them to the students and let them do their evaluation, and then I give them some score to give some similar like a testing. If their testing score is over like 80, and then I hire them. So I do some quality control on the human I hire for the human feedback. That's the best way I can think of.
Thank you. Yeah. We also noticed the hallucination problem because it's widespread. And right now, I think what we are doing, we have mainly two approaches. One is we called large language model factor grounding. This is the basic idea is to connect the large language model to a huge database, which is composed of all the publications in the domain. And what we are trying to do is for every critical claim, the model should search for the database for any evidence and list it. And another approach that's mine, we haven't done that yet. That is, we don't trust the large language models reasoning at all. What we do is we just use traditional models and utilize SHAP analysis, similar explainable network, and just make a large language model, use large language model as a writer. So don't do any critical claim, just turn the predictions and explanations from traditional models to text.
Andrew? So I'll add a few comments on this question. I would sort of categorize approaches to improve in general the performance of large language models, and I'll discuss three basic strategies. One, I think, has been discussed, using the existing large language model, but using it better. So Songhua mentioned this concept of RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Essentially have a corpus of documents that are very much related to the specific domain of interest, and have the large language model enhance the prompt by looking for relevant documents in that database, and adding it to the prompt that sort of conditions the large language model to give you a better answer, because now it is being conditioned to give you an answer in that specific domain. There are also some other ways of enhancing the prompt of a large language model. So there are techniques that are called chain of thought training, and I think our presentation in the morning had some examples of that, where essentially you are asking the language model not to give you a direct answer, but sort of take you through the process of getting to that answer. There's something called few-shot learning, where you provide examples as part of the prompt. Another general strategy, I think Hui Ming talked about using reinforcement learning. And I think this is the year where AI became legitimate. So 2 Nobel Prizes were partially attributed to AI, one for the development of neural networks to Hinton and Hopfield, and the half prize in chemistry was given to a team from DeepMind for developing AlphaFold, the protein structure prediction AI model. But also this year, reinforcement learning became legitimate. So I don't know if you follow computer science news. The Turing Prize this year was awarded to 2 individuals, Barto and Sutton, that were instrumental in developing reinforcement learning technologies. And one of the most important these days applications of reinforcement learning is in improving large language models. And this can be done by incorporating human feedback, as Hui Min mentioned, but also you can use more specialized models that know a lot about the domain, and then getting their input, and that generates some form of feedback that allows you to better fine-tune the large language model using this technique of reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning, very broadly defined, think about a toddler that is learning to perform a certain task. You have to go through many trial and errors and improving the way you are performing the task for eventually being able to perform the task at an excellent level. And one third, I would say, general approach that we haven't seen as much, but is sort of emerging, is what people will call agentic AI. So the observation is that, we humans perform better in teams, right? So if you have, during grand rounds, instead of a single physician, if you have a group of physicians discussing a case, then the outcome usually is better, right? Because one is sort of correcting mistakes or of the other. Think about AI systems that work in a similar way, where you have a model that sort of generates a certain response, and that response is being evaluated by a different model that has been trained in a different way. And you have this interaction of these AI agents. And that is, I think, something that is definitely under development and emerging, and that will improve the performance of large language models and will reduce hallucinations.
Yeah, I have asked a question.
Yes.
We move from BU Medical Campus. Maybe this question for Hui Ming and maybe Andrew. And in terms of drug repurposing, you search the PubMed and lots of literature. So we also know there is a reproducibility crisis. So maybe 70%, some data is non-reproducible. So if you combine all of them together, so the output may be not reliable. So do you think your algorithm can, combine all different kind of data? I don't want you to read all the paper in 19 years, but your computer algorithm will be very fast and combine basic science animal model and as well as the clinical trial data, and come up with some drug target and repurpose, which is reproducible. Then you can translate or tell scientists, physician scientists, this drug target as this drug is potentially, will have a high chance to be successful if you repurpose and from a new indication to older indication to a new indication, especially in clinical trial. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's a very good question. The paper, they do have different quality, and we don't know which one can be reproducible and or not. So that's also a big issue we're currently encountering. Maybe we can incorporate the other, like animal model, some other domain knowledge into and give a quality score for this paper. If the quality score is, then when we construct the knowledge graph for each edge, we also give a confidence score. That will be definitely better. And also another thing we can consider is maybe the papers, published the journal impact factor and also the citation of this paper to quantify how reliable this paper's knowledge is. So we definitely can design an index to quantify, measure this kind of reliability and give a score to the relationship. Yeah, we will do it in the future. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah. So building on the last question, do you think that it may be possible to actually identify papers that may not be reproducible, sort of anomaly detection or quality assurance by leveraging these large AI models?
Yeah, that's definitely a very good question. Yeah, we think about it, but it's hard to say whether it is a new knowledge or wrong knowledge. So if it is a new knowledge, people never talk about it. It might also be identified as anomaly. So even I guess we can use some anomaly detection to identify some knowledge which looks different from the other part, but we can only flag anomaly. For this anomaly, still we need human to investigate if this is a totally new knowledge or if it is like a wrong knowledge. We cannot give this conclusion, I guess.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, Andrew Wilson from the medical campus. Thank you. Sort of a related question then. Can your model incorporate negative data? In other words, there may be a positive association that's published, but if there are also negative associations published, can those be incorporated to give sort of a confidence level about associations that have been identified in the literature?
Yeah, the negative information, do you mean the gene? So maybe a drug is a side effect of a disease. Do you mean this kind of negative effect instead of treat?
Yeah, so there might be a lot of publications that test a particular drug or compound in various ways, and maybe some of them find some outcome and some of them don't find that outcome, or specifically try to test that outcome and don't see it. So does the negative data get incorporated into your algorithm?
Yeah, good question. So we use like a number of papers which mention this relationship. So the edge is actually a weighted edge, the relation for each relationship. So we have the number of papers which mention this drug treat this disease, and maybe some paper they also mention this drug can is maybe has some side effect of this disease for this disease. So we record all those information to make the edge. It has a vector information of a vector of features. So we incorporate all those positive, negative information in the edge and let the neural network decide.
Yes.
I'm wondering, maybe Yannis and Human, if you could answer these drugs that are identified as that have potential for repurposing. What is the next step to actually begin to test these drugs? I would assume it would depend on the circumstances, but is there a kind of a general pathway you might suggest so we can begin to envision how some of what you're finding might begin to move into clinical practice and actually improve the efficiency of reaching so many people who are now untreated?
Great, thank you. So, Huiming, perhaps.
Yeah,
Give this a shot.
also a very good question. That's a big issue of all the drug repurposing paper encounter. Like after we get the prediction results, what do we do? How do we validate it? We need to collaborate with some wet lab to validate the prediction results. But currently I'm still exploring the wet lab opportunity. So if you are interested, please contact me and we can do some wet lab experiments. And after the wet lab gets some maybe promising experiments, the first step is publish a paper. And then after that, I guess I need to talk with some clinical trial experts. After the first phase, maybe we need to have some other phase. So it still takes some time to really, clinically repurpose a drug. Currently, what we are doing is just the computationally prediction. It still takes some time to let it to be in the market.
Thank you. So we'll take one more question, and then I have somewhat of a surprise for the end.
So Jim Feldman from the medical campus. I wanted to follow up on what I understood you saying, how the AI model is being integrated into the neurology practice, because I think that really is a question which is fundamental, whether it's, let's say, clinician enhancement versus clinician replacement. And I thought you said they replaced a model of 2 neurologists with 1 with AI. And I think one of the concerns would be, while AI could enhance many areas of practice, for example, radiologist, it also could replace lots of present jobs. And I'm wondering how you find that balance, because it seemed to me in many areas, whether it improves physician efficiency, but it also could enhance, the expectations for performance. So what is your thought about this as a case study? Thanks.
Yeah, for the case study, thank you for the question. And my opinion regarding this is human clinicians can never be replaced. That's about responsibility and trust. So what I'm thinking is, for example, in their original procedure, they have 2 neurologists. That is, that they have 2 radiologists. That is to make sure before recalling the patients, there's no mistake being made, because we know one radiologist probably is he could make mistake. Then we have 2 to reduce the possibility. When we prove AI model can somehow reach the human level, then we can probably save some labors. and replace that position for AI model. By the way, for the entire procedure they defined, the double review, I mean, two new radiologists joining the review for the screening is only the very first step. After that, when the neurologist or radiologist identify the problem, they are going to recall the patients. And if there is a more challenging problem, and they are going to have gather more expertise so for those steps, nothing is saved. So the only workforce they saved is for the pre-screening step.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I have, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have one question for the audience as a way of flipping the classroom, so to speak, and maybe we can hear one or two comments and then get to a break. So there's anecdotal evidence, and there is also some evidence in the literature that is emerging that if you think about clinicians, where they have been reluctant in adopting AI models in the past, and they were asking always for a model that is explainable. So an AI model, for instance, that would read an image or will do something complicated by looking at the electronic health record and come up with a specific outcome. There was quite a bit of reluctance in sort of using and accepting this type of models, where we can sort of see a divide with large language models. There is much more openness in terms of interacting with them, accepting them, using them, even though these models have their own flaws and limitations, and they are equally or even more of a black box than some of the earlier models. So I'm asking for comments on this divide or oxymoron you could argue, and I have some priors, but I would like to hear input from clinicians.
So I will try to respond with some data rather than some anecdotes, although I agree with you, your general sense that the openness to these models is different than the last generation. Our work with the last generation suggested that the transparency, the explainability actually increased the vulnerability of the user to make the wrong choice. And that seems sort of counterintuitive. You would think that these models that expose their thought would be less vulnerable to that problem. But in fact, as with a language model, it actually tends to lull the user into a sense, we let our guard down. So with the black box models, we're skeptical. So we're less vulnerable when they tell us the wrong thing. With a language model or a more transparent model, in general, we trust it more because it's telling us why it's making the recommendation. And that seems like an appealing characteristic. We've all learned about the value of explainable AI. But in fact, the risk with explainable AI is actually that it increases our vulnerability to these models, our dependence on these models, because we trust them. So your point is well taken. Language models are very approachable, but they do tend to let clinicians let their guard down to our peril.
Okay, so on that note, I would like to thank all of the panelists and the presenters and all of you for your participation, and we'll go to a break.